Hey everyone, this is Neil King with Random Acts of Sketching. And with this episode, we're going to do two things. I'm going to talk about a book that I grew up with, The Thing versus the Incredible Hulk. It's a Marvel feature. And I'm also going to do a sketch. I do a lot of sketches, and I'm looking forward to using these two things together. And I'm going to talk about the book in itself, Jim Starlin. That's very famous for doing all this time, 1973. And then I'm going to do my own little rendition of the comic in my style. And you're going to follow along the steps the way I do it. So I'm looking forward to getting all this done. All right. So let's get started. Okay, everybody. So The Thing versus the Hulk. This is exactly what I wanted when I was growing up. The Hulk was my favorite character, and the Thing definitely was the runner-up. So to get them both into one book, I couldn't wait to see this. And I bought this at a 7-Eleven in my town in southern New Jersey, and it was on the rack, 20 cents. Look at that. And this was turned out to be one of my favorite artists years later, is Jim Starlin. He does the interior. This cover, though, looks like a John Romita Sr., if you can see that look. He did a lot of covers during this period of time. And he's like one of my favorites also. But I wouldn't have known that as a kid. I would have just been like, hey, the coolest characters in the world are going to be in this. So again, this is Jim Starlin, 1973. And at the time, he was doing his run with Captain Marvel. So he was really at the peak of his powers during this period. And I really loved everything that he was doing. And just starting off right away with this big action shot. Now, Joe Sinnott is the inker for this one, and he used to do the inks for Jack Kirby during the great time of probably the greatest period of Fantastic Four. So he's inking on top of Starlin, who many times would ink himself, but he had a few different art inkers on them. But I do really love everything about him, and the Sinnott style is a carryover for some of them. John Buscema was with Sinnott after Kirby left in the 70s. So it's kind of a house style that happens because of Sinnott, the way he would ink everyone. But the things that I always look for when I'm looking at some of these styles, and especially Starlin, was just the movement and his anatomy, that he could really give you a sense of everything, and just beautiful style. So this is a beginning. And again, the thing about this time of period compared to later on with a lot of comics, this is a standalone comic. So it's about 20 some odd pages, 20, 22 pages. And it just brings you through this concept of how do we get the Thing versus the Hulk in one episode. But I think it's funny too, the way that they bring somebody who was never perhaps seen this. Like, let's say this was a kid like myself. I was 9 years old when I bought this. So to see this, I may not have ever read any Fantastic Four, or maybe I just barely knew something about it. So they do just a quick little historical part about the Thing and how this all happened. And they do it within like 4 or 5 panels. So again, this helps a regular viewer at the time who goes to a 7-Eleven, wherever they are, and pick something like this off the rack and just get a quick synopsis of it. Great storytelling, as always. Great sense of depth. And the thing about Starlin is he was an epic type of storyteller. Now, he did not write this one. Len Wein, I believe, wrote this one. But he just picked up this piece, and now this carries on with some of the things as he was doing. There was a 2-episode thing. He did this one, and then there was one more. So I can't say it was just one time that he's done this, but he used some of the things here. So the parts that I really love about this, looking back, this is kind of a throwaway character, but what a beautiful little face. Like, what an amazing little thing. And this quick kind of Kirby feel for the backgrounds. But I think he also kind of has, he's like a little Kirby. He's a Steranko. He's a little bit Buscema. Like he's got a lot of style in it, but it might be because also of the Sinat um, embellishment. But he kind of goes through and he brings up this character Kurgo, who was apparently had shown that I love these little boxes that show the characters' background. So they'll talk about Fantastic Four #7 and all these different things, where he was from. So again, if you're a reader at the time, you're like, oh, maybe I'll look that up, or that you're just kind of carrying on if you are somebody who had never seen it before. But so there's a bunch of things that happen, and it brings them back into it. I think it's so interesting. Like he wants to find the greatest, strongest characters, and they always come back to Earth for some reason. He's all the whole universe, and they always come back to Earth. But he brings up the Hulk as now being the most powerful on here. So we go through it, and they bring the leader in, which he's an old character for the Hulk, and they both pick a champion. So this guy, he picks eventually the Thing, and the leader has the Hulk, and then they get both of them insanely, and they bring them into this. They warp them into this area where they can go fight each other into a strange Western ghost town. It's deserted, of course, but it looks like props almost. Like it's really funny. But look how just beautiful these characters are. The use of color to make it seem like it's he sees an astral projection of the leader. But look how he brings the camera in and out. The colors are just great. They're very saturated. I really love seeing the old comics like this. Again, made in 1973, and they were on pulp paper. So all the colors are just so saturated. I really prefer them to whenever they've reprinted these things. So anyway, quickly, the Hulk is transported there, and they fight right away. So it's like it gets you right into it. And at 9 years old, this is exactly what I wanted. I didn't want to have a lot of subplots. I just wanted to see these two together. And normally in this book, the Thing could never go against the Hulk one-on-one, right? But he didn't realize that one of the guys was saturating him with more radiation to make him stronger and stronger. So you read this through, and you're like, okay, they're almost evenly matched, and they're going against each other. But look at this, that use of text and lots of power movements. This reminds me of so many of the things I saw with Fantastic Four. But this is what Starlin does really well. All figure work, foreshortening, great interest as it goes through. I just love all of the simple little indications of backgrounds, all monochromatic, one color. These guys are brought up to the back. Everything else is sent to or it's brought to the front because these characters are off of them. Again, bringing us through the plot. It's very straightforward character stuff. And you think, again, like as you carry through it, they're just having little conversations about what's going on, and they realize they've been taken advantage of. And of course, within a very short amount of time, they turn on the two of them. And that's the story. This is what, I feel like comics used to be. And there wasn't any major thing going on. This leads into different things. We follow him along. He'll actually be into another adventure. But the idea is like bringing the Thing quickly and to meet different characters in the Marvel Universe. And kids just loved it. I mean, I think these things really sold well. It was definitely a different type of industry. But for me, the whole thing about seeing it, I didn't even know at the time, is I was looking at one of the great masters of comics, and that was Jim Starlin. And I just love the work. Look at these great faces. Very different looking characters. They all have just such unique things. Like, is that the greatest face you've ever seen? Great guy. Like, look at that face. It just reminds me a little bit of John Buscema, though. There's something there, and it's probably because it's Sinat. But anyway, so one of my favorites, this is like, I would like to say this is the first book I remember buying as a kid. And I would have gone to the 7-Eleven and bought a Slurpee and probably bought a candy bar. My favorite back then was Marathon bars. And I could get this all for $1, still have change, and maybe do it later. So that's my first thing. Now I'm interested now into doing a little sketch for you, because I do a lot of sketches, and that's what I'm going to do next. Okay, so let's get started on this sketch. So what I usually use for my sketches when I'm at a convention is some of the most basic stuff. I don't get to draw this type of thing usually. I've done many books in my time. I've been doing this for years and years. But when I go to conventions, this is kind of what I bring. I bring these things. I have a little water for my stuff. So as I do these kind of sketches for this channel, I just want you to know that the idea here is a sketch is all about just kind of jumping in, having fun with it. People come and ask me for lots of different things, but I basically am using microns, just a brush pen, a simple number 2, pencil, and then I have usually a pad. And I'm going to try to just kind of show you how I break these down, and when people come to me for this stuff, and what you would expect when you come to my table, wherever I am. I don't do a lot of conventions, but I do, the ones I do, I like to just draw a lot. So for any character that I begin, I'm just going to do some shapes. And again, with the Hulk, if I'm going to do the Hulk, it's got to be something where that's a very dynamic kind of feeling. So, however, if I was having him fight the thing, maybe I could do something like that for this. Maybe I'll have him fight the thing. So I just try to get some basic things down on how they would look. Maybe have my second image of the thing. And again, I'm never really positive how this is going to turn out. My style is definitely influenced by Kirby. And I bring up Starlin, but Starlin, everybody came after Kirby, so to me, everybody kind of begins with Kirby and the modern comic era. So again, I'm just trying to loosely figure out where the characters, if I was going to do this for someone, where the characters would begin. Now, I like what happens when sketches are like this, that it's not over rendered, but my style again is kind of set for that. So whenever you do this kind of work, you're just trying to lay in some big things. It's not like you can't change it at some point. And again, I'm just trying to get my feel for this. Don't know how it's going to work out. But I've drawn these characters before, so I kind of know where I'm going to go with them, because I've drawn them so much. Now once I kind of get this feel down, like I'm like, all right, I kind of go this. I tend to go in with a closer, I start to get some kinds of detail. And because I'm just trying to stylize this, I don't want it, I mean, even though I feel like everything I do kind of exists in that Kirby feeling, The other artists that are like this, I think, are like the Bruce Timms and characters like that. But I try to keep this so that it's kind of me, you know, that I'm still there. Right? And then get as much kind of detail that I can, but keep it dramatic, you know? Now, when you're doing this first part of it, you just want to get the parts that you know you need to see in great detail. This is not going well for the thing. So, but as you can see, like, I'm not worried. I didn't even do much of an under drawing for this. But I'm usually worried about, you know, getting good detail on the hands so that they're basically there. When you do these kind of characters, again, they're always making these fists. They're coming from all kinds of different angles. I love to draw hands. Especially if they're these kind of characters where, like, the thing only has 4 fingers. I'm not sure why. I have a feeling Kirby got started on drawing it and the hands were so big he didn't even realize, but I'm sure there are theories behind this. But again, just trying to keep it loose. Moving across. Now I think the dynamic stuff starts when I use my brush, because then, for me, I'm not sure what's going to happen. This is like the Pentel brush pen. And when you get started with something like this, it's just that looseness is supposed to bring what I think for myself. This is when I think I become a little more like, I don't want to say it, but like a Gene Colan. I will put color on this eventually. But yeah, you want to get the motion. I don't think I am a typical comic artist. So I've seen such great work by some of those amazing illustrators that are out there. But I really see myself as someone who gets the idea of this stuff. And when I draw, it's all about feel. And if I can keep it nice and loose, and get the impression of it. I think there can always be a chance that I can get something that's kind of new. Because anybody who draws these characters really brings something else to them. I don't like the Thing to have like those beautiful images though that they do of him. When I tend to do the rocks, I try to go around that body, small pieces. But the reason I do this kind of thing, and I think it's fun to see, is that everybody is different in the way they indicate these characters. And I would love to do something with them story-wise, but I don't think I'm the type of artist that does those books. That's why I think for this, for conventions, and this is kind of, if you look at it as kind of a tutorial, is that to try to be yourself in these things, and the decisions you make may be good in some respects. Like sometimes you'll look at these and be like, well, that's not the Thing I know, or that's not the Hulk I know. Right? And this way, but I like the idea of when someone would come up to me and say, hey, I see your style, and I would like to see you do these specific characters. And again, I've drawn a lot of different characters, and I do them the way I do them. But as you can see, very loose. I like to think of it like an impressionistic piece. That's why I love Gene Colan. He penciled, so people would have to kind of pull his pencils together. But he was an abstract expressionist, like a German expressionist. He did all that kind of stuff. He wasn't an actual German expressionist, but I look at his work like that. Like he makes you feel you're from a certain time, and I'll show more of his work. I'll show a lot of his work with, because he's a total inspiration. But Bill Sienkiewicz, they all came from that stuff, right? It's all about that. But again, this is the pen and ink stage. I don't tend to go too much further. I'll bump up the line a little bit. I don't know how you feel it's going here. I love, these two characters together. All right, you're getting all kinds of feel there. Has to hurt. All right. So that's the first part. Now I'm going to put a little color into it. Okay, so I have to clean it up a little bit, because when you do watercolor, again, I'm just using the simplest. There's so many nice watercolors out there, sets, but when you do these things at a convention, and that's how I like to draw them the most, I do really enjoy that. You got to keep it loose, and you got to have something that you can do. So I literally have the simplest. This is Prang, semi-moist watercolors. I like them. They're fast. And again, I just lean into them as much as I can. So hopefully I can show you kind of how this works. Just a nice little round brush. and get some water. And I just want to lean in there. He's green, right? So any things that I do with them, that first layer, is just to kind of lead in with those values. I just literally have some water over here. Nothing. The paper is about an 80-pound paper. I should probably go a little thicker sometimes. It holds up. So I'm just doing a wash. This is really even just wet on dry. I'll give the thing a little green. Get a little piece of it. All right. Touching into the Hulk a little bit. And I'll deepen it as I go on. But what you want to do, I think, is that the ink is really waterproof. So if I'm doing this kind of thing, I'm just trying to get some nice value. I don't want to go too orange with the thing. I'll get them a little yellowed up. Jumped out too fast. Again, it's exciting when you draw like this. I don't know how most people do it, because I'm never probably ever going to draw in real life for get a chance to draw this kind of thing. And I don't know how on a traditional book my work would work, but taking that in consideration, when you're doing watercolors, keep it loose at first and then build your value. Now, I'm not using any kind of anything too rough here. And the back, if I'm saying that light source is coming up from one side. I think a special kind of thing happens when you're working on this kind of paper, and you're just kind of building it, I want to have these kind of characters. They the Hulk has this kind of magenta kind of pants, but I don't know. That's not anything I kind of want to work with. But because he's green, I want to work with opposites, and it seems that most comics are kind of built off of that. That magenta is kind of supposed to be of his pants. It's kind of like a red, so you think of it as almost like his whole costume is complementary. And the same thing with the Thing. Thing has an orange, he's orange, and he's got a blue shorts, so that's complementary. Now, again, with me, the way I work with watercolor is I will attack all the places with the complement most of the time, and then just see if I can't get something from it. Just moving in with some color. Again, there's complements in there a little bit. But I have definitely evolved into what I think, as I was saying, is some type of idea of what I consider more of a expressionist feel for my sketches, that I have very little feeling for the true values. I want to use the colors not in just one place. If I have some of these oranges in there, why not put some, give some of that green a little bit of his browns. But he's all building and building. And usually, again, if I introduce a color of some form, because again, like if I have this blue, I got to get a little blue in there, because it is the thing. I want that blue somewhere else, and I'll probably pull it up in here. Right. And then once I have it, and I'm kind of happy that they occupy the same space, you get a little feeling of motion for it. Then for the finish, I tend to go in with a little, because for a finish here, I tend to use a little black at the end to get some real contrast. And I think it looks a little more dynamic. So I'm going to go in, and I'm not going to allow it to be very subtle. Look at some of the shadows that I have off of him. And I think, if I do a kid's sketch, I don't use black probably at all. But for an adult kind of, they don't want to see some soft little character. They want to see something with a little bit more grit. And to me, when you put that last layer of black in on top, and I have a lot of brushes that have a little bit of, they've been beaten up a little bit. So when you walk on top of them, work on top of them, just this little scene, just like Starlin throwing a punch, and you feel that punch. You're like, that's what would happen if these characters would do that. And again, it winds up being on how much you really want to finish this thing. Like sometimes I feel like if they're over rendered, the magic kind of goes away. So I'm pretty close. I like leaving just the little white areas in there. I just like barely seeing that fist. Is it there? Like, what should a sketch be? I do a lot of digital art, and I don't handle it like this. I wish I could. Maybe I'll be able to someday. But it never has the sense of it. I don't know how people feel overall about this kind of stuff, but when I see this, it winds up being pretty much done. Right, a little dark on his face. Right. Again, simple idea. I love these two characters. I grew up with them. Hope you enjoyed this. Again, I'm going to try to do these kind of series. Simple, fun little illustration like this. Don't forget, take a look at neilrkingillustration.com, and you'll find more of my books. This one, I guess, is one of my many books as I do. I'm working on plenty more. And my Amazon site, everything would be on the links that I bring along with all this. So thanks, everybody. Get out there and sketch, and see you soon.